Ladies and gentlemen, days and nims, my name is Chase. I did the little prayer, the grounding prayer, talking about gratitude, so I want to start off this message with some words of gratitude. I want to thank Ben, Kai, Lynn, and Matthew here at All Souls for their hard work in coordinating with me to make this possible. I want to thank my dear friends for showing up in support, especially Kalishwari for sharing these beautiful hymns in this space. And to Reverend Ron, who chased me across the park at an Interfaith Alliance rally in Denver's Capitol Hill to invite me to speak. I was trying to introduce myself to the youths present there because I just moved to Denver and wanted to build some connections, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I've never had a minister run at me before. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we value diversity. Pluralism is one of our shared values. While we may carry different theological nuances, we can come together to be transformed and to be spiritually nourished in this beloved community. I've seen many congregations develop affinity groups tailored to the individual's spiritual temperament, pagan circles, UU Christians, and meditation groups that often find roots in Buddhist teachings. What I've not seen much of is Vedanta, Hinduism. The particular lineage of Vedanta I will be talking about today is the Vedanta Society, whose prophetic voice is Sri Ramakrishna, and was brought to the West by Swami Vivekananda, one of Sri Ramakrishna's closest disciples. I'm speaking about this particular tradition because it has been very influential in my life. I have grown to deeply, deeply appreciate this tradition. The Vedanta Society and Unitarian Universalism do have a shared and connected history. In the early 19th century, William Adam, a Baptist missionary, went to India to spread Christianity. There, he met Rammohan Roy, who was an influential leader in India. Reverend Adam, after some time, rejected the Baptist Trinitarian doctrine, and together with Roy, they founded the Calcutta Unitarian Society. They got along because they were monotheist, rejecting what they perceived as polytheism in multiple Hindu deities and the Trinity. They were rationalist, emphasizing reason and moral reform over ritualism and dogmatism. And most importantly, they promoted social justice to abolish the caste system and social inequalities. Roy later grew out of Unitarianism to start the Brahmo Samaj, which was more rooted in Indian culture and Hindu symbolism than the Christianity that was coming from the West. And while these movements were separate, they influenced each other in a lot of ways. Swami Vivekananda was a member of the Brahmo Samaj before he started visiting Sri Ramakrishna and was influenced by these Unitarian Brahmo ideas. While Swami Vivekananda did eventually abandon the Samaj, it played a part in his theological formation. The most important difference is that Sri Ramakrishna taught Swamiji that while an impersonal God was true, so were the personalities and manifestations of God that we see in different religious traditions. Sri Ramakrishna taught not to argue with those who prescribe different definitions to God, because all paths lead to the top of the mountain. If someone practices their faith with sincerity and devotion, they will reach salvation. They will become enlightened. They will reach self-actualization, or however else we are defining these terms. When Swami Vivekananda came to the United States, he was close with Unitarian and Universalist ministers alike, even preaching at their churches. They carried similar objectives: to bring peace and unity between people of different religions and cultures. In Unitarian Universalism, one of the ways that we express this aim towards peace and unity is through our shared value of equity. We declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion, and in our shared value of pluralism that I mentioned earlier, that we embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. As Kalishwari mentioned earlier, Sri Ramakrishna taught that Jiva is Shiva. Jiva meaning the individual soul, and Shiva meaning God, that divinity, is the person. But we know that the story does not end there. It is not enough to simply look at a person ostracized by society, condemned to systematic injustice, feeling forgotten and broken, and simply telling oneself, well, they have worth and dignity. They are part and parcel with God. It is not enough. Swami Vivekananda, in his reforms of Hinduism, sent monks to hospitals, schools, and other public services to uplift the material conditions of those neglected by society. And up until this point, most monks in India stayed at a monastery where they were not involved at public life. When talking to the other disciples, Swamiji said, "Where should you go to seek God? Are not all the poor, the miserable, the weak God? Why not worship them first? Let these people be your God. We're at a very intense time in our world. There are many different groups of people being targeted by the state. They're being systematically persecuted. And we have a responsibility to look after our neighbor and treat them as if they too were God, as if they were an incarnation of the divine. I'll tell a brief story. A young gentleman was visiting a monastery on retreat. He wanted to get away from the busyness of life and focus on spiritual matters. And after the morning prayers, rumors had passed around the monks that a homeless man was on the monastery's grounds. This gentleman accompanied a monk to check up on them, and they agreed to bring him a glass of water and some fruit. After breakfast was prepared, this gentleman was waiting in line. He became convinced he could not eat until this homeless man had eaten first. The gentleman prepared his plate and snuck away from the dining hall to give it to this homeless man. The homeless man, being grateful, said, "Bless you," and repeated one of the names of the Hindu gods, Hare Krishna. This monastery was not a Krishna temple, but the gentleman, having understood the universality of religion, fell into a spiritual state and thought maybe, just maybe, Krishna reincarnated as this man so that he could serve God. And returning to the dining hall, the other monks asked him, "Where did you go?" And he refused to give any other details than saying, "My Lord Krishna was hungry, and so I fed him." As Unitarian Universalists, we carry a lot of pride and merit in our commitment to social justice. I'll bring up the joke that the Universalists believed that God was so loving that he wouldn't send anybody to hell, and the Unitarians believed that they were too good to be sent to hell. So maybe our Unitarian side still carries that pride. But now I must ask something that I think that we as Unitarian Universalists need to struggle with if we were going to continue doing the work of social justice with integrity and honesty. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we protesting, volunteering, and serving the needs of others? Are we doing it because we get a couple of likes on Facebook, that my friends and family can see that I'm such a good person? Am I doing it because I go to a UU church and all of my friends are doing it and I don't want to feel left out? Or are we doing this work because within us lies such a conviction that this truly is the divine work? Have I become so in love with the divine, so in love with these universal truths, so in love with God that I cannot possibly do anything else except serve others when the opportunity arises? I want to be clear. I am not suggesting that we burn ourselves out, that we become restless to the point that it takes a toll on our health. I'm not asking anyone to replicate the self-sacrificing behaviors that we read about with these saint-like figures. We cannot solve every problem in the world. We cannot alleviate every moment of suffering, nor make right every injustice. What I am suggesting is that if we are truly dedicated ourselves to this sacred work, we must do it from the right place. Swami Vivekananda was known to be a tireless and humble person. He wasn't chasing name or fame. He was doing this work out of devotion, out of love, out of bhakti. In a similar fashion, our Unitarian Universalist tradition traces its history through Christianity. And when Jesus was walking this earth 2,000 years ago, he was not preaching to the wealthy and comfortable. He was not seeking recognition from the Roman Empire or to be remembered as a prophet. We see this in Matthew chapter 20, verse 16. So the last will be first, and the first will be last. Those who were dearest to his heart were those neglected and abused. Truly, truly, I say to you, Jesus loved the foreigner. Truly, truly, I say to you, Jesus loved the widow and the orphan. And truly, truly, I say to you, he would have loved every person who has been abducted from their home, who has committed no crime, yet sits in subhuman conditions in a prison 60 miles north of here because the shareholders of this nation found another way to capitalize off of human suffering. Both the prophetic voice of Sri Ramakrishna and the many prophetic voices in our Unitarian Universalist tradition recognize the universality of prophetic voices. Both recognize that all religious traditions are legitimate and real. There are many prophetic voices we can look to who have lived a life of love through serving others. And we too, as Unitarian Universalists, must act out of love. We must reflect deeply on what it means to be a religious people. And to be a religious people means that we must reflect deeply. We should aim not to let our signals of virtue, our desires to be known as a good person, or our idealism on what we think is best get in the way of doing the work of justice, doing the work of service, doing the sacred work. All work we do as a religious people, may it be rooted in the sacred love, the center of our lived tradition. In closing, I invite you to converse and reflect on why and how we're doing this work. This is not a conversation or reflection that will end after this service. It is a lifelong journey that I hope you will engage with me, yourself, and the community at large. Amen. Blessed be. Om Purnamidam Purnamadam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you.